Crime investigators, what's the creepiest unsolved case you investigated that scares you to this day? Not a crime investigator, but I had a good buddy that went missing in a cornfield when he was a 2-year-old kid, back in 80 or 81. Literally thousands of volunteers came out to help search the fields and land around his farm for 2 days, but he was nowhere to be found. They even brought in a psychic. His parents were so desperate. On the 3rd day he was finally found, quite some distance from where he disappeared. His parents still think to this day that he was abducted, but because of all the media attention and people searching for him, the kidnappers returned him, pretty much just dropping him off and hightailing it out of there. Definitely thought you meant abducted by aliens at first, and I was like, well yeah, it's a cornfield. I work as an investigator for the county medical examiner. The cases that always creep me out are the Jane and John Does, especially the younger ones. How could a family not report a loved one missing for 10, 20 or 30 years? Some of these cases are not suspicious, so it's not like the family is worried about going to prison. Looking at forensic genealogy to assist with some of the cases. Have you ever listened to Bear Brook? It's about multiple people being found in barrels in the woods, and they didn't discover who most of them were until recently. Worked in forensics 2004 to 2008, mostly rapes, homicides, and cold cases. Never forgot one where a baby was abused because a burglar threatened to kill the entire family if the parent didn't do it. Wasn't solved before I left and nothing came up on Google. Never forgot names. The idea that someone out there free is that fucked up, or that someone would make that shit up, is so disturbing to me. Wait, what now? The burglar made the parent abuse their own baby? That's one of the most fucked up things I've ever heard. Back in the early 80s, a 16-year-old boy was walking home from a party about a mile from his house when he was intentionally hit by a vehicle and dragged by the vehicle before being dumped in front of his house for his father to find his body in the morning. The police say they have suspects but not enough evidence to make any arrests. There are still posters all over the town and surrounding areas with his picture asking for information more than 35 years later. Really a tragic story that needs closure. Edit, this is the Eric Cross case, and I am not an investigator, just a local. Pretty similar thing happened near my hometown in the 70s. Some dude was walking home from a party and they found him the next day with his head smashed open on the side of the road. He left the party after getting into a fight, so the guy he fought ended up being suspect number 1 and was eventually convicted. After spending quite some time in jail, the case was finally revisited when more modern forensics were applied. Turned out the dude got hit by a trailer from a tractor. Whoever hit him probably had no idea. Dude was finally freed from prison something like 15 years later. In a town close to me, a few years ago, a little boy went missing. He was in a foster home with his siblings. There was apparent previous reports from neighbors of them wandering off frequently because they were left alone without food, breaking into garages, I think. He was reported missing by the foster mom. She went on TV and everything, I think I remember. There was so many search parties. We live in the desert, so there is a lot of open land. I stopped hearing things about it. Eventually I asked one of my buddies who works in that PD and he told me they never got any real answers. They found remains years later that they believed to be his in a canal, but it had been so long not much was left. Also they think wild animals had probably spread what was left of the remains around after all these years. Not an investigator. In League City TX, there used to be a dead-end road. The city grew like crazy. In the process of clearing land, they found dozens of girls buried. Still several unidentified. They stumbled onto the dumping ground for a serial killer. It's called a road if you're familiar with that area. They did a documentary on it at some point. My sister went to prom with a guy who lived next door to this. One night she's over at his house and a random girl comes running, no shows on, screaming, banging on the door saying some guy picked her up or was following her. Boys say the man was nowhere to be found. Prom date and brother get her to safety, then proceed to tell my sister all the weird ghost stories because weird things like that always happen around here. They thought she was spooked by feelings of being watched or something, until a few years later when they started finding bodies. Again, edit, reached out to my sister for full details. This is her story. Okay. So it was some girl from Angelton got in a wreck in front of the house by the field. She comes running to the house. with no shoes on. This girl tells them some guy was following her. He was trying to run her off the road. Blocked her car, forcing her down this road. Called her. The road was dark, she didn't feel right. She saw the lights on in their house, so she wrecked her car as she jumped out and ran to the back door. Boys got her inside, then saw flashlights around their house, which apparently happened often. Keep her inside long enough to feel like whoever it was left/drove away, only to realize during all this she had been drugged. That's why she didn't feel right. Call cops. Man was picking up girls at a bar on Nassau Road 1 and drugging them. So they caught at least one creep. Bodies were found there from the 70s till I think 2000s. Fun fact, she tells me that apparently now there is a subdivision over these killing fields. 2 girls in their 20s round murdered in their car. McDonald's food in their laps. Windows up, doors locked. No sign of a struggle. Was my last case I ever worked. 3 years ago. No suspects have been arrested. Edit, I was an investigator for the medical examiner. My job was to document facts, not solve the crime. Local law enforcement is responsible for the solving. At my first department, someone was stringing up dogs in the trees behind houses with their throats cut and bled dry. Serial killer behavior, obviously just killing them to kill them. Worked on that case a couple weeks, but after 4 or 5 dogs, it just stopped and my bosses wouldn't let me work on it anymore with all the real crime going on. I still think it was a future serial killer practicing. And GT, worked on that case a couple weeks, but after 4 or 5 dogs, it just stopped. He moved on to bigger things. How many cows did people find strung up? Someone killed 50 dogs and left them on top of parked cars for a year, then it just stopped. There's a man who comes into the bar I work at every day around 4 p.m. He's nice, has a group of other guys he socializes with. His wife comes in every Sunday with him for football season. Their daughter went missing a few years ago. They had a suspect, who my older sister actually dated for a short period. When they couldn't definitively connect him to the case, they cut him loose. He's now serving time for a completely separate kidnapping/murder. He hasn't confessed to the first one, so the couple will never really know if they caught he guy. Everyone just assumes. I don't think the family will ever get closure off of an assumption though. The Molly Bish case. A 16-year-old girl was dropped off for work at the lake where she was a lifeguard by her mom. She was never seen alive again. This happened in the summer of 2000 in a small town in central Massachusetts, about 30 minutes from where I grew up. I remember seeing missing persons signs all over local business when I was a kid looking for Molly. They actually did find her body in the woods near her house apparently, but no suspect has been arrested. Someone was picking up drunk homeless people in my town, about 20 years back, beating them up and dropping them far from town during the winter season, which can last for about 2 to 8 months and drop as low as -45°C. Edit, few extra details. It was during the mid-1990s, in the Terrace/PG/PR area. Not sure if it was police or not. Those that live in a small town only how talk gets around. I remember nothing coming from it. It could have been police or just town thugs. It was just kinda scary for us teens at the time. Are you thinking of the Saskatoon freezing deaths? Or maybe something inspired by them? I'm not an investigator, but this happened to a little girl in my brother's class and a friend from school. My friend was a happy-go-lucky, chubby guy that everyone liked. He smoked a little weed from time to time, which made it hard for him to keep a job. One day he goes missing and is found in his barn swinging from a rafter by a friend of his. Suicide note. No ladder or any way for him to have gotten up to the rafter. No typical signs of depression or suicide such as saying goodbye to loved ones, taking care of loose ends, etc. Gets written off as a suicide, case temporarily closed. 6-year-old girl was missing from her home in the morning, found in the barn hanging from the rafter and raped/molested with a knife. Stepdad had porn of her on his computer and somehow was cleared on the murder by pinning it on a teenage neighbor. Neighbor kid claimed stepdad put him up to it and smoked weed with him, but there was no evidence to convict and the teenager went to jail for murder while stepdad got a reduced sentence for child porn. Neither got a drug charge, which was also weird. The reason I mentioned these together? Stepdad was the friend who called in my friend's death. After no luck with the county, I anonymously messaged Channel 5 and they had to reopen after it was reported publicly that they missed something. Forensic analyst said the suicide note was faked. Suddenly the detective on the case finds there was a ladder present, reclosed the case, and retired. Dude got away with murder, twice in one case and once in another. I consider both unsolved till the right guy goes down for them. Mystery was solved a few days after it happened, but I figured I would share anyways. In the town I live in there's a rundown motel that all the druggies stay at. Well anyways, there was a night that a man walked into and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and blew the cashier's brains all over the wall. Stole $112 and some change. Obviously an investigation was opened and for 4 days they didn't have any leads or anything. Turns out on the evening of the 4th night they supposedly found the murderer behind the motel in a cornfield in a fetal position, just rocking back and forth. Took someone's life for $112. Wow. Edit. Okay guys, I get it. People have died for less. Please read the replies before you post the exact same thing 20 other people did. I don't work in crime investigation anymore. I do animal rescue. But we kept receiving animals found stray that had been sexually abused with sticks and we had to take them in, help then recover and find new homes. It happened for 2 years straight, then nothing. He's either dead, locked up or moved on to humans. Police have DNA but no one has ever been caught or linked to it. I hope that fucker burns in hell. The 35-pound bags of human vomit that appeared in the PKG lot of the Radnor, Pennsylvania Bed Bath & Beyond. For a few weeks, the woman on Philly walking to the Acme MKT, who thought someone ran by and hit her accidentally. She shopped for 30 minutes at Acme, then walked home and her daughter discovered a chef's knife lodged in her neck. No one at Acme said anything and the knife was visible on surveillance. And GT, no one at Acme said anything and the knife was visible on surveillance. I see you've never worked retail before. For a time my business contracted to a buy company that was made up of part-time police officers. One case they told me about was a guy who simply vanished. Normal life, wife, kids, active in the community, gone out of thin air. Over the years, there were verified sightings of him. There is recording of him over a year later at a bar in Omaha. Bartender happened to be from the area where he disappeared and recognized the guy after he left. Best anyone could tell is that he just wanted a new life and successfully started over. Yes, the Texas killing fields. One theory was it was a truck driver picking girls up and dumping them since it's so close at I-45. Sorry, I was responding to my other post. I just knew and this got out of the thread. Someone had been leaving half-eaten fish all over West London, as in counter-bought fresh fish, scales and all. It was an ongoing cold case cause the saliva was the same on each one. No one was really victimized by it though, so we never got a chance to properly look into it. I'm not sure I understand. What's the crime? Littering? A local girl went missing about 2 years ago. Whole community and neighboring communities got involved. Had a hashtag they painted on car windows and everything, tried like crazy to find her. The parents still hold out hope, but I'm not convinced they really do, and it's devastating to watch. I have friends that know the family. I have 2 young girls, and this is a fear that my job forces me to take home with me, that one day they'll disappear and that's it. There are some sex trafficking hotspots nearby. A week after that girl disappeared, I told my wife she was most likely already dead.